Today is February 12th, 2015, and in the last video clip that I made, I explained a little bit more about the circumstances in which I had first met Brian Haines and some of the government individuals who are connected to him. And I also explained a little bit about the my ideas of possibly why they had me doing various projects that they had me doing. But anyway, that had been when I was a kid. So I mean, I was young, and then meeting him later, I actually didn't meet him again until he ended up working at this gas station that was right next to my house where I had been getting gas. So this was, 2 decades later almost, and what happened is I already explained that how I met, or how I ran into Holly Myers again, but didn't recognize her, and didn't know that she was the daughter of Catherine and Catherine Myers, who worked at a prison facility, and who knew me, and her dad, whose house I had stayed at on the coast in Oregon. So I had accepted her invitation to rent a room from them in Lake Oswego. And when I was living there, as I explained earlier, there was a gas station that was, approximately 2 blocks from my house. And it was very close, so I would just get my gas there. And I got it, on a regular basis. At that station, all the gas people knew who I was. I mean, I was one of the regulars. And I was possibly more of a more frequent regular than some people, because I didn't always fill up my tank. I sometimes didn't have time, and I was just running around. I was going to college at the time. Nanette, stay down. Nanette, up. This dog, Nanette, up, likes to have me pay attention to her whenever it seems I'm making one of these video clips. And anyway, so the my circumstances at the time were that I'm not sure if I was working, because I did have a job at the same time, part of the time that I was going to college, but I think whether I did or not at that time, because I did work in Lake Oswego for some amount of time, I was really short on time. I crammed all my classes in, and I tried to get as much done as I could. And so typically I was just kind of running from one thing to the next, and I remember that I didn't always have time to sit around and wait for my entire tank to get filled up, so I just get a little bit and then go to college and to my class. And so I ended up, not necessarily seeing them just, like maybe once a week or a couple weeks or anything. I saw them quite frequently because they were right next to my house. And so that is why and how I was a regular there. And the gas attendants, he was not, Brian Haines was not working there initially when I was first going there all the time. And Nanette, come here. And so when he started working there, I actually, when he came over to my car and I was getting gas one day, I actually thought that he was just some random person because he was dressed in regular clothes, and I just thought he was someone that was also getting gas or something that was walking over and just asking me a question. And then I realized, oh, he actually is an employee of this gas station. And so he was newly hired after I had been showing up there, which is how I know that he got the job after it was known that that's where I was going. So in my opinion, it was kind of it was a way to stalk me. It was another government employee that knew me when I was a kid, who I feel now was deliberately stalking me out. And his family, and where I had known him before, and the location where I knew him, was in Wilsonville. And and they're pretty connected to the Wilsonville cops over there. So, and the Bechtolds, as I've mentioned. And Robin Bechtold had worked at a Chevron in Sherwood when he was a high school student, and it was kind of like, I think it was his senior year of high school, his junior or senior year, so it was 1992 or 1993. And this gas station where Brian Haines started working at was also a Chevron. Pretty sure it was a Chevron to my recollection. And it was just a few years after Robin had been working at Chevron. So I'm not sure how many people know the employees, you know, from Lake Oswego to Wilsonville and Sherwood, where Robin worked, but you know, it was only about a half an hour driving distance between the two towns. So he ended up working there, and he approached my car and went over to my window, and I had a book in my car, and in the back seat, and he was actually looking around my in my vehicle, and I noticed he was looking in the front and the back seat, and I guess scoping everything out, and I kind of wondered what he was doing, and then all of a sudden he said, so you like to read, he said something about that was a good book, and it was in English. It was a classic novel that I had in the back of my car. And then he started talking about some novel that he'd just read that was a English book, and then he said to me, so you like to read, so you like to, or well, he put it this way, you like to read? And I said yes. And he said, well, that's I noticed your book there. And I said, yeah, I'm studying, it's for a class. And he said, well, he said something about, is that just your own reading, or is that for class? And I said it was for class. And then he asked what I was majoring in, or where I was taking classes. And I said, where? And then that I was an English major. So he acted really interested in reading, and started talking about books and novels and things that he'd recently read, and poems and that kind of thing. And knowing, anyone who would have known that I was studying that I was interested in getting to know people who also liked English classics and that sort of thing, he would have known that it was sort of a lure for him to be talking about how interested he was in literature. So I had said, well, maybe sometime we could, and it had been known that I was, you know, looking around for some friends and people to talk to about different things, and kind of expanding my social circle at the time, because I didn't have a lot of friends, and I was just very busy. And it seemed that everybody else in this community college that I went to was also extremely busy. They just took their classes and went home and went to work, or their families, or whatever. And people didn't really socialize that much outside of school. It wasn't like a university where you go, you're all living on the same campus, and you take your classes, and then you meet each other, you know, after class and that kind of thing. I mean, people were busy and taking off to do the other things that they did with their lives. So, you know, here I was thinking, okay, this is someone that's kind of around my age. He says he really likes to read, and enjoys reading and writing poetry. And he had said that he was a writer. And I thought, well, it might be interesting to get to know other writers. And I was the friendly type of person, and actually it would have been known to anyone who knew me at the time that if someone sparked my interest in that way and seemed to share a common interest, I was apt, Nanette, I was apt to, and likely to invite that person to maybe have coffee with me or talk. And Nanette, come over here. Because I was actually, with strangers, generally speaking, I didn't have a problem just extending an invitation to someone, saying, hey, do you want to get together and have coffee, or do you want to meet me for this or that? And with various writers, I had at different times already said maybe we could get together and we could have a writing circle. And I had actually tried to put together a writing circle myself more than one time. From the time that I was a preteen, which, was, years before high school and before, college, up until the time I was in college, I had several times tried to get a writing group together, and alternately, at one time had tried to get together a Russian conversation group, and so I was someone who anyone would have known was the type to be sort of entrepreneurial and try to develop things myself and get groups going. So I believe that he knew this. He knew who I was. I didn't know who he was. He knew I didn't know who he was or recognize him. And I feel that he had stalked me out, knowing that I was there all the time, and knowing that I was the type of person who was actively looking for individuals to join me in these kinds of groups for literature and language. I think that he knew very well that I would possibly and probably extend an invitation to get together, and I believe that that was his motive. So at the time I didn't think about it at all because I didn't know who he was, didn't recognize him at all, and he just said his name was Brian. So he gave me his phone number, and I said, okay, great. And then basically from there I was going to call him and see if we could get together and talk about books or whatever. And anyway, that's not what happened, because he then ended up being part of the same government group that had obviously been already trafficking me and assaulting me and raping me, and I believe that he felt that, okay, it's his turn now. And I think it's very possible that he got tipped off by Robin Bechtold or by some of Bechtold's friends because of the gas station that he was working at and the employees that were there. And the other individuals who worked there with him were Irish American, and Robin Bechtold knew a lot of Irish American, so did his brother Nathan Bechtold. And they seemed to know. I didn't know who they were. I don't believe I'd met them before I saw them there, the Irish American workers there, but I do believe that they knew who I was. And also the Bechtolds and the Myers very likely knew each other and where each other lived. I was always being kept track of. So anyway, that is how I then met Brian Haines again, and the kind of tactics he used to try to engage me by knowing things about my personal history and background, and using that to make it sound like, oh, it was just this natural thing, and that he wasn't stalking me at all. And in the next video clip, I will describe what happened when I went out with him, and then what happened from there, and how I realized that I had to get out of the situation, and why I had originally thought he was maybe the only person that had not raped me. And I don't think that he overtly raped me when I was with him the first time, but he did use government tactics and like code words and that kind of thing prior to any kind of contact. And then later at his house, he did rape me while I was under the influence. And I later found out that supposedly someone else had made a claim against him that she had been raped by him. So supposedly he had a past history, and I didn't know about that. But I will bring that up in the next clip.